Hey mamas, you're listening to the Balanced Working Mama podcast, the only podcast teaching you how to balance your work, motherhood, and wellness. I am Dr. Amber Thornton, clinical psychologist and mama wellness consultant. Each week we dive into tips and strategies and much more so that you too can become a balanced working mama. Let's dive in. Hey mamas, we're here for another episode of the Balanced Working Mama podcast. Well, how's it going? How are you all doing? Hopefully everyone is doing well. I am excited for today's episode, but of course we've got to check in first. So I want to briefly check in. I am doing well. What's going on over here? So Eden has been in daycare for about a week now. And so far, so good. Actually, the other day I dropped her off and I asked them to let me, just kind of peek through the window of her classroom, not like outside, like not in a creepy way, but like in the lobby, there is a window where you can see the infants. And because of COVID and the pandemic, they had not been letting parents do this, but they allowed me to do it because Eden is right now the youngest person in the daycare. So they let me peek in there just to make sure that she was okay. She was doing good. And y'all, she looked like she belonged in there. She was like, "These are my friends, Mom. This is my class. I'm fine." And so it was just so cool to see that, I really enjoyed spending a lot of time with Eden and being home, but I'm also ready to get back to work and, figure out what this next phase and transition will look like and feel like. And part of that means that Eden has to go to daycare. So it feels even better to know that she's doing well. She hasn't had any issues so far. Of course, it's still early, but we'll see how it goes. And they just love her because y'all know she's cute. So far so good. It was just so adorable. There's two other little girls in her classroom, and they all were just sitting in the circle. The other girls are maybe about 9 or 10 months, and they can sit up and just sitting there. And Eden is just looking around. It is just so cute, y'all. So either way, things are going well. And at the time that you are listening to this, I am transitioning back to work in person. So I think most of you all know, while Balanced Working Mama is a major part of the work that I do, I also still have a 9 to 5. Yes, I do. And so I am going back to work this week, and I work for a school. So we are in person, y'all. So this is going to be an interesting journey for me. Balanced Working Mama so far has existed during a pandemic. Now we are moving into a quote unquote post-pandemic transition. And I'm using quotes because we all have different beliefs about whether this is a post-pandemic, and I don't believe so. However, society is wanting to move in a direction in which it is believing that the pandemic is ending. And that's actually what we're going to talk about today on the episode. But what that means for me is that I am going back to work in person. So I will definitely be sharing with you all what this transition is like for me. How do I manage my my part-time business and my full-time job while working in person? It's going to be a new challenge, but I'm up for the challenge. Of course, you all should follow me along on Instagram because I share a lot of stuff like that on there. So follow along if you're not already following along, but I'll definitely try to keep you all updated on the check-ins here as well. All right, y'all. Well, let's talk about today's episode. We are going to talk about post-pandemic transition for working mamas. And this is important because, one, this is something that I am actively working through, but also I know that so many of you all are transitioning into another new normal as society attempts to get back to what is normal. So I hope y'all enjoy today's episode, and let's get into it. Hey mama, I want to quickly tell you about the Empower Wellness Program. This is a dynamic 6-week group for working mothers who are tired of feeling overwhelmed, fatigued, burdened by mom guilt, but then also just not having enough time for themselves. This program takes all of that and transforms it into more wellness, more time for yourself, better priorities, community with other mothers, but then overall balance in your work, motherhood, and wellness. To learn more about the Empower Wellness program, head over to balanceworkingmama.com. There you can find when the next program begins, what to expect, but then also how to sign up. Hope to see you in the next group. All right, Mama. So let's talk a little bit about this post-pandemic transitioning that is happening. So, first, I do want to acknowledge that when we say post-pandemic, I feel like that right now is a very, I don't know, controversial. Feels like a hard, or not hard, but like a not controversial, but it is a term or a phrase that is like up in the air. It is very relative. For some people, it might feel like we're moving into a post-pandemic season, but for others, maybe not. And so for me, this post-pandemic, what that means when I say it is that no, it doesn't mean that the pandemic has ended. There are still so many people that are impacted and affected by COVID-19. People are still struggling. People are still losing their lives. There are whole countries and societies that are still going through it as if it just started. Like, this does not mean that the pandemic is ending and that all is well. That's not what we mean when we're saying post-pandemic transition on this podcast today. Instead, what I mean by post-pandemic transition is that what we are noticing in this country particularly is that there is an attempt to move forward into a new season in which we are seemingly getting back to what is normal. We're getting back to what used to be, and that looks different for everybody. So, for instance, for some of you all listening, you're probably noticing like, yeah, my kids are going back to school in person this school year. I am going back to work in person, or, my job, my employer are changing the expectations now that we're moving into this post-pandemic season. You might be noticing that you or your children are getting more requests for like meetups in person. No more Zoom coffee dates. It's actual like come to this particular spot and meet up, or more play dates. We all are noticing that there are fewer mask mandates where some of us are living. But just in general, the streets are open, y'all. Like, people are out here. People want to be out. I think a lot of people are feeling more ready to be out and about, less anxious about that. But that doesn't mean that that's the case for everyone. But what it does mean is that this is now a new normal that we are having to adjust to yet again. This is another transition that will require an entirely new adjustment process. And again, I am going through that as well. You all, for the last year and a half, and I know this is not just me. So as I'm saying this, I know that this is going to be so relevant for some of you all. For the last year and a half, my life has looked one way, and now this week is going to look a totally different way. um, I have been working from home for a year and a half, y'all, and the year has went by so fast. And now I'm at the end of it, like, what happened? Like, where did the time go? I really was able to chill in leggings every day. But now that is having to end, and it feels very, I keep trying to think of the word for this, and I don't know why it's not coming to me, but it feels very, the word will come to me later as we're talking through this podcast. But what I'm saying is that I don't think that we should just rush through this next process or this next transition. We can't just expect that, oh, well, this is how things are supposed to be, so it's going to be easy to get back to it. That's not true. That's not true at all. And that's exactly why I wanted to talk about this on the podcast today. One, again, because I'm going through this transition with myself and my family, but also I know that so many of you all are as well. And I want there to be some sort of roadmap or some sort of context for how we're thinking about this next transition. So I want to say that it is so unrealistic for us to assume that just because this is the old way of doing things, that it's going to be easy to just pick up and go with no issue or no concern. Not at all. We have been through it, you all. The last year and a half has been really hard for so many reasons, for so many people, in so many ways. And it was not easy to transition into what that time looked like, but we did it. And so the one thing that I want to say is that just because a season of our lives is traumatic, is challenging, is not easy, does not mean that we don't adjust to it. We actually do. People adjust to trauma and traumatic situations all the time. It doesn't make it any less traumatic. It doesn't make it any less challenging. But what I'm trying to say is that we got used to that lifestyle. Many of us are now used to no longer having to deal with the hustle and bustle of going in and out of work. Many of us got used to the challenge of having our kids home all day, every day. Many of us got used to working from home when we never thought we would ever be able to do it. It was hard and we got through it and we did it. We adjusted. And now society is asking us to readjust to something different. And so, again, I want to fully reiterate because I think some people assume that, hey, just because this is the old way of life, this is the normal way of life, that is going to be easy to get back to it. It is not. So, I want to talk through a few reasons for why adjusting back to the old way of living might not be so simple, especially for working mamas. So I've got about 6 different reasons for why this might not be as simple as you're thinking, or as simple as your employer is making it seem, or even people around you might be like, oh, we're going back to the old way of life. It's a good thing. It's still going to be challenging, and it's for these reasons. 1.5 years is a very long time, y'all. It's a long time. And just what I was just saying, we fully adjusted to this pandemic lifestyle. Again, it was hard. There are many parts of it that we did not like, we did not enjoy, but we have fully adjusted. And so while it was traumatic and it was difficult, we adjusted, and now this is our normal. And so this is difficult because we are now adjusting to something different. Number 2 reason why this next adjustment might be hard is that our children and our families have changed, especially our children. And so when you think about yourself and how much you might change within a year's time, it can be significant, but even more so for our little people because our children change so rapidly. And so if we're thinking about, okay, this is the way I used to do things before March of 2020, you might not be able to do it that same way because your child is not the same person that they were before March of 2020. So for instance, I'm just thinking about my particular experience back before March of 2020. My son still wasn't eating solid foods. He was still breastfeeding 100% of the time. He was not walking. He wasn't talking. He did not say no. He a whole different person. I've had a whole baby since then. And so what you mean get back to the normal way? That old way don't work for us no more because this kid is completely different. He walks, he talks, he eats all the food. He tells me no. He says, Mama, I want grapes. The other day he told me let go when I tried to hold his hand. What is that? And so what I'm trying to say is that the old way of life is so different than what needs to be done now. And I think that is so essential, especially for working mothers. I think that sometimes people outside of our lives, especially our places of employment, don't take that into account as much. We now are having to adjust to this whole different season that we've never seen before. And it feels abrupt, it feels sudden, it feels challenging because we don't know what this next season is going to look like because we've never been here before. There's no such thing as going back to the old way because our children are completely different. Our families are different. Our routines are different. And we've got to figure those out now. Another reason why this next adjustment might be challenging is that it's just really unrealistic for our places of employment to think that we can just get back to it. And so I kind of already reiterated this. There might be this expectation that, hey, you did it before, you can do it again. Just come on back in at 8 o'clock in the morning. Or come on back in until 5 in the evening like you did before March of 2020. And again, thinking on my life, reflecting, and again, want you all to be reflecting for how things are different for you now. Back then, I was only worried about getting one kid out of the house before 8 o'clock. Now I have two, and I've never done this before. And so this new transition, this new season is going to take time. It's going to take patience. It's going to take some figuring it out. And I think sometimes, again, the people outside of our homes don't realize how that is a process to figure out these steps and these routines to get going. We've never been here before, and yet society is asking us to get here quickly, and that's unrealistic. Another reason why this next adjustment might not be so simple is that there might be some anxiety or some apprehension from your children about making this new change to rejoin the world. And so this can be different based on the age of your child, where your child's at in terms of their development, or even just their awareness of what was happening in the last year and a half. But many of our children will not want to move so quickly back to rejoining the world. Some of them might have some anxiety about COVID-19. Some of them might be still dealing with some traumas of losing a loved one because of COVID-19, or experiencing a parent who lost a job, or a parent who was just struggling in general with regard to all the changes that were happening. Our kids might have some apprehensions, and that's something to consider, because sometimes we forget that our little people have their own feelings about these things. Granted, some of our kids are ready to get out there. Some of our kids want to go on the play date. Some of our kids want to go to, y'all, I was about to say go to the mall. Do kids still go to the mall? Y'all's older kids, is there a mall that y'all go to? Like, I don't even know what older kids do nowadays, but some of the kids want to get out there and want to go back to school. Some of them want to do those things. Others do not. Others are nervous about it. Others have not played with other people in a while, and they don't know what to make of that. And so we have to be mindful that our children might not be welcoming to these changes that are coming, even though society is kind of forcing it on us, right? The other thing is that we have our own anxieties and apprehensions about making these changes and rejoining the world. So that's another reason why this adjustment might not be so simple. You yourself have your own anxieties, worries, concerns, fears, hesitations, apprehensions about joining the world, rejoining society in this post-pandemic time. The last thing that I will say about why this adjustment to this new post-pandemic season might be challenging is that there might be some unique things that impact you and your family specifically that make this hard. And so there's so many things that we could be going through that make this challenging. Grief, other things, like just so many things that are going on in life that have been exacerbated or brought on because of the last year and a half. And so again, I want to reiterate, this is not something that is going to be easy. If you have been worried and stressed about this, rightfully so. And I also want you to know that you are not alone. So I want to give you all some tips, some things to just really think about in terms of how to move forward in this new post-pandemic season. Again, this is not going to be easy. It's not just, oh, let's get back to it because that's where we were before. It's not, oh, everybody's ready and welcome to come on. No, this might be challenging for you. This might be hard for you. This might be hard for your family, and that is okay. So I want to walk through some things that I want you all to consider. I want you all to keep in mind. I want you to use them as tools as you begin to navigate this next transition. Number one, give yourself all the grace. like literally all the grace. And I know that y'all hear us say this all the time. You're probably tired of hearing it. You're probably like, well, what does that even mean? Give yourself grace. If you've never given yourself grace before, this is the time to do it. And basically what that means is just be easy on yourself. Comfort yourself, be nice to yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. Just allow yourself to walk through this and make mistakes. Forgive yourself for not knowing things. Just be easy on yourself. Treat yourself as if you would treat your child when they are navigating something new, because this is essentially what's happening. We are navigating something completely new. None of us have been through an experience where have gone through a whole pandemic and now trying to get out of it. Nobody has gone through that. Who's listening to this podcast? I'm assuming none of you have gone through that. And so this is totally new. Give yourself some grace in this next season, please. Number 2 tip, move slow, go slow. You don't have to have all the answers right now, because realistically, you don't have all the answers right now. You don't have to figure this out tonight. You don't have to have it all figured out by next week. Move slow when possible. Of course, this might not be possible when it comes to your expectations from your employer or other things, but when you do have opportunity to just go slow and figure it out in time, be patient with yourself, please do. The third tip I want to say is I think it's important for us to really assess what has changed within ourselves and how that might impact what this next season is going to look like or what we might need in this next season. So, for instance, how have you changed? How are you different? What are some new things that you might need that you didn't need before? What are some things that you needed before that you no longer need? Really take a moment to really assess, how am I different and what does that mean for this next season for my life? Because if we don't know that, there's going to be a lot of things that pop up in this next season that might catch us by surprise. But if we can anticipate like, hey, I'm different in this way. I need this at this moment. It might make this transition a little bit smoother. Number 4, I want you to do a similar process, but for your children and your family. I want you to sit down and think, what is different within my family? What's different with my children? What has changed that might impact this next season of life? So, for instance, like I just said earlier in the podcast, my son is older now. He eats, he talks, he requests things, he has demands, he has preferences, he walks. None of that was happening before. And so that's different. So I have to really take that into account and put it into context. I also have a whole other human here now. And so things are really different. And we have to consider those changes, consider how these things are different, and really consider, okay, well, what does that mean for this next season for me? Number 5, really communicate your needs to other people. You all know that this is one of the core tenets of balance in motherhood, is really effectively communicating your needs to other people. This is the time to for real do that. Like for real. If you've been slacking on communicating your needs, this is the time. Like right now, communicate your needs to other people so that we know what you need, how we can support you. And then the next one, I think we're on what, number 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 6 goes hand in hand with number 5. Ask for the help and use the help. If people are offering help, girl, this is the time to use it. If you need help, this is the time to ask for it. This is the time. Please use the help. Ask for the help. This is not the time to be shy about it. This is not the time to be feeling like, oh, I got to figure this out. I got to do the strong woman thing. No. This is not the time to be strong. This is not the time to play around with, let me figure it out by myself. Ask for the help. Use the help. Number 7, I want you all to walk into this next season with very little expectation for what it should look like or what it might look like. Because again, like I've said, this is a whole new season and we've never been here before. We don't know what it should look like. We don't know. We have maybe some preferences of what we might want it to look like, but we don't truly know what it should be like or what it will be like. Walk into this with very little expectation. You can have preferences, you can have opinions, you can have desires, but hold off on expectations because we don't know. And what we know is that when we have expectations, that often can lead us up to feel disappointment or feel as if we failed because we're striving for one thing and it's off a little bit. But again, we should have very little expectation for what this next season is going to look like because we've never been here before. The last tip I want to give you all is to really move into this next season expecting some trial and error. So if anything, that's the one thing that you can expect. Try things. It might not work. Try something different. Try things. It might not work. Try something different. If you find yourself in the midst of a trial and error cycle, yes, you can feel frustrated. Yes, you might feel disappointed, but just know that you're learning something. Whenever we're doing trial and error whether it's with our routines in our families or trying something with our kids or trying something new for ourselves, if you're having to figure it out and keep figuring it out, you're learning something. That's information. Use it. Use it. Use it. Use the information so that you can get to where you want to be. There might be some trial and error as you navigate this post-pandemic transition with you and your family. And that is okay. It is okay. So, you all, I hope that this was a helpful episode. Please know that you are not the only one going through this. I too am navigating this next transition and what this post-pandemic season will look like for me and my family. And it is not easy, but I know that we can do it, you all. So please reach out to me. Let me know how it's going for you all. Let me know if there's any other questions or anything else that might be helpful in terms of talking about this. I do want to say that later in this season, my husband and I are going to come on the podcast and talk together a little bit more about how we're transitioning, how we're doing as a family of 4, and some of how we do things within our family. So please stay tuned. Continue to be subscribed. Listen out for that episode. It should be coming within the next few weeks. Also, if any of you are feeling like you really are struggling with this next transition, with figuring out the routines, with figuring out how to navigate things in your family, or if you feel like you've come out of this pandemic and your wellness is just gone, there's no wellness, there's no time for you, there's none of it that will help your well-being, I'm here for you and I would love to work with you. I do have a few more slots for one-on-one work with me. If there's mamas who are like, look, I just want to work specifically with you to get myself together in this area, head to balancedworkingmama.com. Check out the one-on-one wellness program. I am taking 1 or 2 more mamas for the rest of this year. So if you want to work on this together, we absolutely can. Of course, we've got our next Empower Wellness program coming up in October. Right now, we are in the very middle of the July cycle, and it's going really, really well. Just this past week, the mamas worked on values and really figuring out what are our values, what are our priorities right now. Are the choices and the decisions we're making in our life aligning with these values? And if not, what we going to do? What we going to do about it to make sure that these values and these things that we really say we prioritize really show up in our lives? So the mamas are having a good time in the program so far, and I am as well. So I cannot wait to work with so many of you all. But either way, I hope you all enjoyed today's episode and talk to you all soon. Hey mama, I'm so glad you're listening to the podcast, but I also want to connect with you on social media. So be sure to follow me and Balanced Working Mama on Instagram. You can find me at Dr. Amber Thornton. That's DrAmberThornton, and Balanced Working Mama at Balanced Working Mama. BALANCEDWORKINGMAMA. Follow along, join in on the fun, but then also send me a DM to say hello. See you there. Hey mama, thank you for listening to the Balanced Working Mama podcast. If you love this podcast, please be sure to rate it and share it with another mama that you know. And don't forget to follow me and Balanced Working Mama on Instagram. I'll talk to you soon.